The Welsh in the early 18th century are living off the land. But it's the treasures that lie beneath them that will take Wales to the dawn of a new age. One of new discoveries, new inventions, and political awakening. Wales is entering a modern era. It takes just 100 years for Wales to be profoundly changed, with vast supplies of natural resources fueling an industrial revolution. And the Wales that's about to emerge is volatile, is explosive, and exciting. We begin in 1750 as the Industrial Revolution turns Wales into a global economy. The next century brings great wealth. It brings terrible poverty. And it brings connections to the slave trade. We'll see how forgeries help create an extraordinary cultural revival. This brave new world fuels uprisings and social turmoil, and ultimately provokes our very first cries for democracy. It's the early 18th century. 500,000 people live in Wales, still an overwhelmingly rural country. The largest towns are Carmarthen in the south and Wrexham in the north. Each has fewer than 5,000 inhabitants. Almost all the population speak Welsh. But all this is about to change forever because of the very stuff beneath our feet. On Anglesey, Paris Mountain, or Mynydd Paris, is renowned among the locals in the 18th century. It's a world of strangely coloured rocks and earth that smells of sulphur. Paris Mountain is a place of magic and alchemy. But there's about to be another explanation for its character. There is a story that a local miner called Roland Pugh, on the 2nd of March, 1768, stumbles upon some ancient treasure. He discovers the remains of a rich vein of copper ore, an ancient vein. It was once worked some 4,000 years ago. And this is the point. There's plenty more of this valuable stuff in the ground. So Mynydd Paris and the surrounding area are being propelled into a new age, an age of industrial revolution, at a speed and on a scale that is unimaginable. This is what remains of the copper mines of Paris Mountain today. A scarred lunar landscape and testament to the start of a whole new era in the story of Wales. Now, you might think that the man whose discovery triggers all of this, the miner Roland Pugh, is amply rewarded. He does get a bottle of whiskey, and he gets a cottage, rent-free for the rest of his days, which for him really is a big deal. But before we get carried away, what about the man who sets up the Paris Mine Company in 1774, the local lawyer Thomas Williams? His reward is rather more impressive. He becomes the Copper King. Williams is one of Wales's greatest entrepreneurs. He makes his fortune by selling Paris copper to the British Navy. They wanted to clad their wooden ships to protect them from damage from timber worms. Even today, we describe anything that's secure and reliable as copper-bottomed. In just 12 years, Williams creates the largest copper mine in Europe, employing 1,500 men and women. It's only by coming down to this level that you can really appreciate the graphic reality of this place. The sheer size of it, this barren landscape, and the thing that makes the impact straight away, the strange, vivid colours of lots of these rocks. Just imagine an 18th century farm labourer seeing this place for the first time. Wales's new industry becomes a mecca for artists and travellers awed by this futuristic vision of toil and labour. Some record in graphic detail what they see. Picking the ore from the rock, hammering the wadding, the roar of the blast. It's all the more remarkable when you stop and think that this immense crater was made with nothing more than picks and shovels and a bit of gunpowder. I suppose it redefines the concept of hard work. And Paris Mountain points the way ahead in its brutalised environment to the future of industrial Wales. Roland Pugh rediscovers Wales's valuable minerals. And the transformation this starts is the first of many that will define the next century in the story of Wales. What's happening here at Paris Mountain is just a taste of what's to come, because Wales has far more to offer the world than just copper ore. This is a land rich in resources. There's lead, there's iron, there's coal, of course. There's a vast fortune to be made, and these resources will be exploited on a global scale thanks to one of the biggest advances in human history. The Industrial Revolution. It will dominate the next 150 years. Scientific discoveries and new inventions are changing every aspect of daily life. Water power and steam power drive new machines that increase production. This combines with Wales's mineral wealth to make it an industrial powerhouse of global significance. Here's the challenge. To make 1 ton of unrefined copper in the 18th century, you need 3 tons of coal for the smelting process. It makes far more sense, of course, to bring the copper ore to where the coal is, which is how this place becomes the copper capital of the world. They call it Copperopolis. We call it Swansea. It's ideally located at the heart of a truly global industry. Swansea is a unique location. It has a deep navigable river, the River Tawe, that leads right up to a rich source of coal. So copper ore is shipped upstream, unloaded and smelted right here on the riverbank. And the coal from the nearby pits feeds the furnaces that smelt the ore. The copper ingots produced here are exported around the world to be used as an ingredient to make bronze and brass. Swansea goes from being a small seaside town to a sprawling centre of industry and a global phenomenon.
The growth of Copperopolis was the first really large-scale industry in Wales. First large-scale heavy industry which transformed the landscape, attracted huge numbers of people from rural Wales to work there. The river would have been very busy with ships, and the whole place would have been absolutely shrouded with sulphurous smoke from the ore smelting. And the overall effect to a newcomer, particularly from a rural area, would have been absolutely shocking.
Many who stay become some of the most skilled copper smelters of the age, and part of the most technologically advanced copper plant in the world.
One of the key things that distinguishes Copperopolis and the story of the growth of the Swansea copper smelting industry was that it was the first truly global industry, the first industry to export this product truly internationally all around the world, both to Asia, the Americas and across Europe to Africa. And it's here at Swansea that that process first began.
As business expands, copper ore from as far away as Cuba, Chile and North America is shipped to Swansea. By 1820, more than half of the world's copper smelting industry is focused on Copperopolis. The lower Swansea Valley is a vision of a new industrial age. Furnaces glow and chimneys belch fumes and smoke. Copperopolis is the beating heart of Wales's industrial revolution. Overgrown and derelict today, you can still see the remains of Havod, once the largest copper works in the world. But for all the greatness of Copperopolis, this valley and its people would pay a heavy price. The copper works pump out sulphurous gases and arsenic by the ton. Workers suffer chronic bronchial diseases. Crops wither in the acid rain and livestock perish. Farmers lodge court cases against the owners of the works for ruining their once fertile soil. By the late 19th century, what Copperopolis leaves behind is the largest derelict industrial landscape in Western Europe. There is another dark side to Wales's first global industry. Copper is an integral part of the slave trade.
One of the few finished products made were manillas. These were brass and copper bangles made to a traditional African shape. Around three to 4 dozen manillas such as this would have purchased an adult African slave, which were then transported to the Caribbean and to the southern part of the USA, where they would then work on sugar, cotton and tobacco plantations. And of course the products of those slave economies were then consumed across Western Europe, including of course here at Swansea. People dressed in cotton clothes, they smoked tobacco, they put sugar in their drinks. So really there was a two-way connection with the slave economies and the slave trade of West Africa.
The manillas made in Wales would remain a legal currency in some West African colonies until the start of the Second World War. By 1790, the Welsh Industrial Revolution is unstoppable. Slate from the northwest, coal from Flintshire, and textiles from Bala. They're all sold in Europe. Despite this transformation, the places we think of as centres of population are lacking some important things. There are no libraries, no universities, no civic centres. So even as industry thrives, bright young people in Wales who want to explore new ideas and pursue an intellectual life have to move elsewhere. London, the largest city in 18th century Europe, is a cauldron of new ideas, and the Welsh intellectuals flock to it. A remnant of that history still survives today. The Honourable Society of Cymrodorion is set up in 1751 to debate all things Welsh, from history, arts, science to politics.
I give you 2 examples. If you want to think of what Lloyd George's real attitude was towards Wales, I think it's very similar to his real attitude towards his family.
The Cymrodorion Society was set up by Welshmen, and they were mainly men. In fact, I think they were totally men who came to England, to London.
Indeed, I would imagine that it was a coming together of people who had keen literary interests, were keen to know more about the history and traditions of Wales, and people who perhaps played a key part in political life.